Stick this in your ear.
The number one internet shock radio network.
Shock me with that deviant behavior.
Renegade Talk Radio.
It's Friday the 13th of December in the year of our Lord 2024. And you're listening to The American Journal with your host, Harrison Smith. Watch it live right now at band.video.
I think it's time.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to The American Journal. I'm your host, Harrison Smith, coming to you live this Friday the 13th from InfoWars headquarters here in Austin, Texas. We have a very big show for you today. Our main topics are likely to be the war in Syria and the drone incursions into New Jersey. We've talked about it here or there. I'm gonna try to dig in this time. Really come to some answers. After all, it is my obligation and my responsibility, as we are InfoWars. And I know, and we've said it many times, whenever there's an event, a world event, an occurrence that isn't adequately explained by the mainstream media, people come to InfoWars knowing that they'll at least get an honest breakdown. I know before I worked at InfoWars, this is one of the few places I would go. I wouldn't always go to InfoWars for everything. Some things, you just watch mainstream news and you think, yeah, that explanation makes sense. But then sometimes there are things where you go, I don't know what's happening, but I know these people aren't telling me the truth. I know the mainstream media is hiding something about this. And so you go to InfoWars to find out what that is. And if that's you listening to me right now, welcome. And we'll do our best to fulfill that mission of telling you what the truth is. Here's the irony. Sometimes the truth is, we have no idea. I have no idea. We're going to puzzle it out. We're gonna puzzle it out. We're gonna put on our detective hats and really try to get to the bottom of this, because we've got statements from the FBI and DHS and Congress and the local authorities, and none of them comport with one another. None of them are saying the same things as anybody else. Now, in the mainstream media, they would just present these two entirely different explanations with a straight face and provide no explanation. What we'll do is we'll show you some various explanations, statements from the likes of John Kirby, the governor of New Jersey, as well as congressmen. And there are certain things we can determine to be true or false on the basis of those. In other words, when they say there's an Iranian mothership launching car-sized drones that the U.S. military is incapable of dealing with, that's a lie. So we'll start with that basis of knowing that that's a lie, and then ask the questions like, why are they saying this lie? Who is the person saying this lie? Who told that person to lie? Does that person even know they're lying? And by asking simple, critical questions like that, I think we can get pretty close to the truth. And I imagine it's going to be exactly what we have been saying the whole time: false flag operation by our own government. Towards what end? That's where the speculation comes in, and we'll speculate wildly, fear not. We'll take your calls on that topic as well, and we'll be joined by Matt Baker in the third hour, talk about his very viral video getting kicked out of the San Diego City Council. Also, did you see the tree? Have you seen the tree? It's so tall you probably can't even see the top of it. It's glorious and beautiful. So Merry Christmas, everyone. We have so many videos to get to, a lot of just politics to get into, some war propaganda to break down, and some mysterious drones to debunk. So let's get right into it. Here it is, your Daily Dispatch. All right, here it is, folks, your Daily Dispatch for Friday the 13th of December, 2024. From Newsweek, Homeland Security speaks out on mystery New Jersey drone, quote, threat. The Department of Homeland Security has spoken out following reports of mysterious drone threats from New Jersey. In a joint statement with the FBI, they said there's, quote, no evidence that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or public safety threat or have a foreign nexus. The appearance of the drones in New Jersey has confounded law enforcement, and large drones spotted across the state have evaded traditional detection methods, the DHS has said. The mysterious devices have been reportedly seen from New York City area to Pennsylvania, including Philadelphia. Initial sightings near the Picatinny Arsenal, a U.S. military research facility, and their reported presence near President-elect Donald Trump's golf course in Bedminster sparked concerns. Oh, how strange. How strange that these mysterious UFOs would appear right outside of a secretive U.S. military research center. How very strange that is. Yeah, we'll get into that. We will get very into that, don't worry. Meanwhile, companies step up security in wake of United Healthcare CEO killing. And look, it's exactly what we told you would happen. Companies are closing headquarters, scrubbing their websites of top executives' photographs, and increasing armed security details for key leaders following the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Health insurer Medica temporarily closed its Minnesota headquarters as a safety precaution, as a spokesperson told CNN. CVS and other healthcare companies have removed photographs of CEOs and other executive leaders from their websites after Thompson's killing early Wednesday morning outside of a hotel in Midtown Manhattan. It's common for top executives of major corporations to have personal security provided by their companies, but companies in a wide range of industries are racing to enhance security measures for executives in the wake of the killing. Well done, you socialist moron. You absolute idiot, incapable of determining second-order effects. What did you think was going to happen? So yes, in your fight against corruption in the medical industry, you have now given them all the reason they need to hide the identity of their executives, surround their executives with security, separate their top-level C-suite executives from the hoi polloi beneath, and just further increase the disassociation from those at the top from everybody else. So what did you think was going to happen? Did you think insurance rates were going to go down? They're going to go up because all of that security is expensive. Meanwhile, Baphomet statue erected by Satanic Temple at New Hampshire State House has been destroyed. And I got to say, when I heard this, I was outraged. What type of world do we live in where people are erecting a Baphomet statue? Why wasn't it destroyed earlier, I wonder? The Satanic Temple's, quote, holiday display was, quote, completely destroyed after it was set up near a nativity scene in Concord, New Hampshire, outside the State House. The Satanic Temple in the area set up the display on Saturday. The Satanic Temple, based in Salem, Massachusetts, got a permit to place their display of Baphomet, an occult deity with yellow eyes, wearing purple upside-down crosses near the New Hampshire State House, per Boston.com. The display depicted the Satanic Temple's 7 fundamental tenets. Is that the Noahide laws? I think I've heard of this. People were wondering who put this statue up in the first place. And it turns out it was a state representative. Democrat State Rep Ellen Rode reportedly asked the Satanic Temple to join in on the display near the nativity because she wanted their participation to symbolize, quote, our pluralistic society. Yeah, you know, every society is pluralistic to some degree or another. You've got good and evil, and that's the plurality. Got two sides of the coin. You've got good, wonderful, innocent, joyful, happy, and kind. And then you have sheer, unrepentant evil. And I guess we have to represent both of those in our holiday displays. I'm just going to say it quickly for people who haven't heard me say this 1,000 times before. There is no legitimacy to the Satanic Temple whatsoever. It is just an anti-Christian hate movement. You wouldn't allow Nazis to set up a reenactment tent outside of the Holocaust Museum because it would be deliberately provocative and not a legitimate expression of ideological or religious belief. It's just a sheer provocation. That's what it is. That's the purpose of it. You wouldn't allow that because it's just provocation. Why do you allow this? Why should we allow this? The answer is we shouldn't. We absolutely shouldn't, because there's only one of two options. Either they are a real religion, in which case they are actual devil worshipers and demon worshipers, and that shouldn't be allowed, or it's not a real religion, in which case it doesn't deserve the protections of a real religion. The only reason they would set this up outside of a nativity scene is to be deliberately provocative and express an anti-Christian agenda. So there's no reason to allow them to do that. Period. So I'm glad it was destroyed, and I hope it was destroyed again and again every time they put it up. I hope it gets destroyed in more and more fantastic fashion. Meanwhile, we have this. Time magazine shows Trump as Person of the Year for 2024, or Man of the Year, as it's known now that Trump is on the cover once again. And finally, we have this. Cancer warning issued over popular cooking oil that is, quote, poisoning Americans. A new study looked at the tumors of more than 80 patients with colon cancer and found that seed oils raise the risk of the disease. A new spike in colon cancer cases among young Americans might be due to the ingestion of certain kinds of culinary oils, a recent government-backed research suggests. There's been talk that chowing down on hefty servings of seed oil like sunflower, canola, corn, and grapeseed could trigger bodily inflammation, though solid proof has been elusive up till now. And again, it's one of these double-edged swords. I'm glad they're talking about the dangers of seed oils. That is a victory in and of itself. At the same time, I don't think that the distinct and disturbing spike of cancer, particularly in young people, and particularly this novel type of turbo cancer, I don't think that can be blamed on seed oils, because there hasn't been a massive rise in the use of seed oils to correspond with that spike. I think that's because of the vaccine, and maybe they're covering it up by admitting that seed oils do in fact cause cancer, something that we've warned you about for a very long time. That's your Daily Dispatch, brought to you, of course, by thealexjonesstore.com and drjonesnaturals.com. That's drjonesnaturals.com is where you can get the incredible Vitamin Mineral Fusion, one of our top-selling products of all time, the absolute gold standard in daily vitamin and nutrition. One scoop is delicious and enough to serve you all day with all the vitamins and minerals you need that you're not finding in your daily diet that has been denuded of nutrients because the soil doesn't have any nitrogen, and because the modern farming practices rely heavily on pesticides and other very dangerous chemicals to make sure to get enough yield, and that is just a fact of life, and you have to make up for it. So we encourage you to go to drjonesnaturals.com, get your Vitamin Mineral Fusion, and live healthily. That's drjonesnaturals.com. Go there today and stock up while you can. I have so many videos to go to today, I don't even know where to start. We're going to talk a lot about Syria, and we're going to talk a lot about the UFOs today. But I got some other videos just about politics in general, U.S. politics in general, that I think we'll start off with. We'll begin with a video posted by Elon Musk about the Doge, and let me just, before I go to this video, I get this comment a lot. And look, we're always, like, I like Elon Musk. What he's done has been incredible. He has unleashed reality again through X, a change that I don't know if we'll ever be able to fully comprehend the downstream effects of that, of the purchase and opening up of that platform. Personally, it's been incredible because I got my account back. Same with Alex Jones and InfoWars and all of us. At the same time, he wants to put chips in your head and is, mainstreaming robots, and is very into the whole electric car thing, including, this idea that there will be a fleet of 1 million Tesla cars driving autonomously 24/7 and not owned by anybody, a total World Economic Forum pipe dream, but he's making it real. So I get it. People are suspicious of him and are constantly trying to point things out. One of the things I keep having people point out is that Doge, D-O-G-E, Elon Musk thinks is a funny meme. And it comes from the Doge coin. It's a misspelling of dog. It has to do with this Japanese dog meme and a meme coin that he picked up, and then Department of Government Efficiency, D-O-G-E, Doge. And people point to that as if it's some sort of occult symbol. I think people need to understand that, we're beyond the age of symbols to some degree. It used to be, you'd be watching an award show and you'd have to look real close and go, I think that woman's wearing a pentagram necklace. Like, I think that's what's happening. Or you'd pause a music video and go, look in the background, or look how the scenery is arranged. Do you see this is a witchcraft ceremonial circle? Spells are always cast in circles. You have to find these sort of. But now it's just like, oh, look, it's a fat transsexual lesbian dressed up like Satan, humping demons. Like, these things aren't hidden anymore. It's not exactly secretive. You don't have to look for these secret things anymore. And let me just tell you, people are it's like people get confused about it, and I think the argument is that like Doge is like a Roman label of a leader, and people are saying like this is like a Catholic Jesuit thing, that Elon Musk is an agent, that he's going to be the Antichrist, and Doge is a symbol for that. That's not what Doge means. Doge is a I don't know what you'd call it, an evolution of the word dux or dukes, which is where we get the term duke from. Duke and Doge have the same Latin root, and it means two, and it had to do with a position, a military authority position about land between the two rivers. And so it was the dukes, D-U-X, and then D-U-K-E-S in English, and D-O-G-E. And the place where it was most often used was Venice, where the leader of that republic was called a doge. But again, people are pointing to it as if it's like some sort of symbolic thing where it's like, oh, it's the secret empire, signaling that he's the leader. But Venice was a republic. It was the one place that like resisted becoming the Roman empire, and they like prided themselves on being the Roman Republic and a continuation of the Roman Republic long after the Roman Republic fell, because Venice was, and still is obviously, but at the time, it was like swamplands. It was, off the coast. It was a place that wasn't easy to conquer or get to. And so the people there avoided the collapse of the Roman Republic that occurred everywhere else. They were able to defend themselves from the barbarian hordes and, would say, like, we are the Roman Republic, the continuation over 1,000 years. And the leader, the Doge, was an elected position in a very Byzantine, and that's not the right word, but very complicated system of electoral politics that the Venetian Republic prided itself on. So again, it's like people point to it and go, Elon Musk is signaling with the Doge he's going to be the emperor. And it's like, no, the Doge wasn't an emperor. The Doge was an elected position in a republic. So unless you're saying that he is bringing back the Venetian/Roman Republic that America was founded on, I don't get the objection here. Anyway, I see people talking about that all the time, going, Doge. Do you know what Doge means? It's like, yes. Do you? Do you know what I know what it means. I know where it comes from. I know the usage. I know historically where it came about. What do you think? And they're like, it's the Catholics saying the Roman Empire. It's like, no, it's literally the opposite of that.
Do they tell you to trust the plan as well?
Well, I do trust the plan. Nobody has to tell me that.
It feels very cute.
Nobody has to remind me. Very cute or very cute?
Very
the dog
cute.
is very cute.
Very cute. You know
the
what I mean?
Doge, very cute.
Just people are looking too far in, right?
I think they're very suspicious for good reason. I mean, there is something about the fact that like he's the number one player on a game called Diablo, and he wears a Satan outfit around sometimes. And he definitely, and again, I don't know. You could just be a normal dude that just thinks it's funny.
He could just be a normal dude. He's like the world's richest man.
He could be the world's richest man that's just a normal dude. I mean, the fact that he's like the number one player in one of the most popular multiplayer games around, Diablo 4, it's like very weird. Like you have to be really good to get to that level. And it just makes the whole situation bizarre, I feel. But anyway, he posted this from an account, I believe, called Doge, or this has to do with Doge, clip number 4. And again, I just thought I'd go on that little tangent because I do see a lot of people pointing to that word Doge as if it's some secret symbol. It's like, no, it was a Republican position. They came out of a military leadership position of the Roman Empire that America was modeled off. It's not that Not that crazy, not that occultish knowledge. There he is, just playing his video game and apparently being the CEO of 26 different trillion-dollar companies. Okay, if you say so. Part of me wonders if he just like has AI. He just sits at the computer and like clicks on the keyboard. It's not even plugged in. It's just AI.
Hey, but if you make that AI that's that good, is that valid?
Maybe so. Maybe that's the whole thing.
You can still have I mean, if you're smart enough to make the best AI, but yeah.
And you deserve to win it, Diablo. Yeah. Anyway, here's the video he put out that's very good and stands on its own. Clip number 4. Here's a video from Elon Musk about the real deep state and the conflict that we at InfoWars have been talking about for years. The conflict between the unelected bureaucratic class and the duly elected representatives of we the people. Let's watch.
Our nation was founded on the basic idea that the people we elect run the government. That isn't how America functions today. Most legal edicts aren't laws enacted by Congress, but rules and regulations promulgated by unelected bureaucrats. Tens of thousands of them each year. The entrenched and ever-growing bureaucracy represents an existential threat to our republic, and politicians have abetted it for too long. That's why Doge is doing things differently. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are entrepreneurs, not politicians. They will serve as outside volunteers, not federal officials or employees. Unlike government commissions or advisory committees, they won't just write reports or cut ribbons. They'll cut costs. They will liberate individuals and businesses from illicit regulations never passed by Congress, stimulate the U.S. economy, and generate prosperity for the American people. Now is the moment to deliver a government that would make our founders proud. Now is the moment for decisive action. Now is the moment for Doge.
Now is the moment for Doge. That video is by Western Lensman. Western Lensman on X. I think it's a very good thing. I really do. Now, I have some longer videos to show that I think we'll get into in the next segment, including, and I guess while we're on the topic, talking about the way that the SEC and various other functionaries of the Biden regime are going after Elon Musk in a totally unfair and arbitrary and targeted way. Because believe it or not everything in politics or the media is a shadow puppet show. Most of it is. A lot of it is. And we'll be showing you a lot of the deceptive material on today's show. But sometimes it's real. Sometimes there really are conflicts between people with divergent interests at the head of our government. We'll explain.
Folks, Nerve Renew is in stock at InfoWarsStore.com, and this supplement is amazing for a number of different reasons. First of all, we know that prescription opioids and pain relievers end up making us feel groggy, cloudy of mind, and frankly, addicted after time. But with Nerve Renew, we have key natural ingredients. It's a nerve support formula designed specifically for peripheral neuropathy and nerve pain relief. So if you need help relieving your aches and pains and inflammation and maybe even some nerve damage that you have from an injury or just working with your hands for years and years, Nerve Renew is the way to go. So by visiting InfoWarsStore.com and getting Nerve Renew under the InfoWars MD tab at the top of the website, not only are you investing in your own health, relieving your own pain in a natural, healthy, and safe way, but you are keeping InfoWars on the air. We know that InfoWars is under attack. Alex Jones is under attack. Freedom of speech is under attack. But you can fight to keep InfoWars on the air. So please go to InfoWarsStore.com right now and get Nerve Renew under the InfoWars MD tab at the top.
Infowars.com is tomorrow's news today.
You're watching The American Journal with your host, Harrison Smith.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is The American Journal, Infowars.com, band.video. Talk a little bit about politics and the Syrian war right now. And we'll get to the drone controversy in just a second. But man, there's so many giant stories. First of all, conspiracy fact, IG report confirms FBI had dozens of informants in January 6 crowd. While the presence of FBI informants on January 6 was known, the exact number was never confirmed. 4 of the informants entered the Capitol, while 13 others entered restricted Capitol grounds, despite not being authorized to do so. Just in time for the Trump pardons, DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz revealed on Thursday that there were 26 confidential human sources, CHSs, in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. While the presence of FBI informants on January 6 was known, the exact number had never been confirmed. And I seriously doubt 26 is the real number anyway, but that's okay. Because they were CHSs and not badge-carrying Agent Smiths, Politico decided to run with this piece of absolute propaganda, with Politico saying, CHS or IG inspector report confirms there were no FBI agents in the crowd. You know, using the technical definition of agent, knowing that the average person doesn't make the distinction between confidential human sources and agents in the FBI. But these are the word games they play to lie to us about this. CHSs have contributed to the prosecution of members of the Proud Boys and other people who were present on January 6th. According to Horowitz's report, all but 3 of the informants were in there in connection with the protests and other events that took place that day. 4 of the informants entered the Capitol, while 13 entered restricted Capitol grounds despite not being authorized to do so. Of the 26 sources who went to Washington in connection with the protests and other events, 2 were tasked to report on subjects whom the FBI had learned were traveling to the nation's capital for the events. A 3rd informant had been tasked with reporting on people traveling to Washington for the event after notifying a handling agent about planned travel to Washington. The other 23 informants had not been tasked by the FBI with traveling to Washington. 13 of this subset informed their handling agent in advance of the trips, while the other 10 did not. None of the 23 were found to have engaged in illegal activity. Fox News broke this down very thoroughly. Clip number 15, I believe. I don't know if we'll play this whole thing, but again, this is how mainstream this so-called conspiracy theory has gone. And it was never conspiracy theory. It was always obvious, but they just keep lying to us. And honestly, it's absurd for them to even lie, because if you have 1 million people descending on the Capitol when both houses of Congress are in session and Trump is giving a speech, wouldn't it be kind of irresponsible not to have people in the crowd? Shouldn't the response to the FBI be like, yeah, obviously we had people in the crowd. We were concerned something was going to happen. So why did they lie about it? Because likely the confidential human sources were not there to report on and try to keep a handle on violence breaking out, and were there doing their job as you would expect a confidential human source to do. No, it was likely because they were intimately involved in the outbreak of violence from the outset. Let's go to this report from Jesse Waters. Clip number 15. Bombshell report on January 6th has dropped. Let's watch.
Fox News alert, the Justice Department just released the bombshell report that we've been waiting for. What actually happened on January 6th? The FBI had 26 confidential human sources there that day. 26. A confidential human source is a guy the FBI pays to spy for them. Of the 26 confidential human sources who were in D.C. on Jan 6th, 4 entered the Capitol during the riot. An additional 13 entered the restricted area around the Capitol. So more than a dozen FBI spies participated in the so-called insurrection. A bunch of them broke into the Capitol. Their own inspector general says this is what happened. But that's not what they told you when they testified under oath.
Those who were there in an undercover capacity on January 6th, how many were there?
Again, I'm not sure that I can give you that number as I sit here. I'm not sure there were undercover agents on scene.
I thought I heard you say you didn't know whether there were FBI agents or informants or human sources in the Capitol or in the vicinity on January 6th. Did I misunderstand you? I thought that's what you said.
Well, I referred very specifically to undercover agents.
Yeah. And so are you acknowledging then there were undercover agents?
As I sit here right now, I do not believe there were undercover agents on scene.
The director was hiding something, so Congress asked the question a different way. Listen.
Did you have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters inside the Capitol on January the 6th prior to the doors being open?
Again, I had to be very careful.
It should be a no. Can you not tell the American people no? We did not have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters positioned inside the Capitol.
Gentleman's time has expired.
You should not read anything into my decision not to share information.
Director Wray,
confidential human
gentleman's
sources.
time.
Ray's right. The FBI didn't have undercover agents at January 6th. They had confidential human sources. So what's the difference? Well, a confidential human source doesn't get health insurance or a pension. They're just freelancing for the feds. Rats in MAGA hats. They're basically paid informants that the FBI runs at headquarters. A lot of these FBI rats get picked up on some other charge. They get sat down and the FBI says, you're going to work for me now. And if you don't, you're looking at 20 years to life. So these guys say, yes, sir. And they cozy up to people like the Proud Boys and anyone the feds wants to watch and control from the inside. And these confidential human sources are under pressure to deliver. What does deliver mean? It means intelligence and big busts that get the FBI good headlines. According to the Inspector General report, the spies were feeding the FBI intel that said January 6th was going to get a little hairy. But FBI headquarters did nothing about it and then lied to Congress and said they did. So why did headquarters let January 6th get so out of hand? And what were all these FBI spies doing that day and the days before? Were they riling everyone up like they did in the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot? In that case, the FBI informants instigated the plot. They even used an FBI credit card to buy the ammo, supplies, and hotel rooms. Did the FBI pay for Jan 6 hotel rooms? We don't know. Remember, the media and the Democrats said this whole thing was a conspiracy.
Where do you think this idea comes from, that this was somehow done by the feds?
I heard that one of the debaters said it was an inside job. It's an inside job on the part of Donald Trump and his henchmen.
Republicans have blamed the FBI and said it was an inside job.
It certainly was not an inside job by FBI agents or Antifa. They go around blaming it on Antifa and FBI agents.
Well, how did the media know it wasn't an inside job when the FBI had 26 of their people on the inside? January 6th certainly benefited the media, the FBI and the Democrats. 1,500 arrests, humiliated Trump, got him impeached, criminalized the MAGA movement. Trump got indicted over January 6th, remember? They tried to throw him in prison over this. The January 6th committee, it's all Democrats did for 2 years. Why didn't the committee find any of these snitches? They did a one-sided investigation and teed up Garland to charge Trump so they could run against a convicted felon. So the media is going to apologize, right? No. The media today is cherry-picking the report to say there were no undercover agents there on January 6th. The whole thing's a conspiracy. These aren't articles. They're FBI press releases. And they wonder why their ratings are trash and no one trusts them. It's because of this. They don't want the truth. They want to hide it if it hurts the left. And they can't admit they were wrong because it's too embarrassing. And they were a part of the cover-up. But the FBI is worse than the media. The FBI knew what was in this report. They covered it up before the election. And then the director says he's resigning the day before it comes out. Give me a break. This kind of sliminess is why Trump nominated Kash Patel. I wonder what else Kash is going to find in the bureau when he looks under the hood.
As a former federal prosecutor and a public defender who defended a lot of these types of cases, what you need to show is whether or not the FBI and government agents were using undercover operatives and informants on the day of January 6th. Once you prove that, then you defeat the insurrection narrative with the FBI's own documentation.
And what does this report do to the January 6th defendants? None of the confidential informants were arrested or charged. These guys were right alongside everyone, walking into the Capitol. But you're in prison for years? Now, if you're a defense attorney for a Jan 6er and this drops after the case was decided, That could change everything. Constitutional law professor Jonathan Turley says this, quote, there is a question of why the confidential human sources who entered the Capitol were not charged as part of an operation that the Justice Department described as an effort to shock and awe, targeting everyone involved that day. This report does not find specific wrongdoing or direction from confidential human sources in the rioting. Congress, however, is likely to seek more information on these sources and their conduct on the day. Are you allowed to commit crimes as a spy for the FBI and not get charged? Because they said this was the greatest attack on democracy ever. Said it was up there with 9/11. Traitors, they said, seditionists. They're off scot-free. You can try to overthrow the government if you're an FBI rat and just walk away. Congress has to find out. And what does this mean for pardons? I mean, the Hunter Biden pardon already greased the runway for Trump, but this reports all the ammo Trump needs. He told Time magazine, it's going to start in the first hour, maybe the first 9 minutes. Now, if I were president, I don't think I'd pardon J6ers who were slugging cops, but if you were wandering around peacefully, come on. And it's not just Kash Patel that's going to clean house. Tulsi's on deck.
I'm here with Tulsi Gabbard. She's here on the Hill meeting with my colleagues. She's going to be a great DNI, Director of National Intelligence. It's a really important job. It oversees all of our intelligence agencies, and it's in need of reform. I think everybody would admit that, and so we need to bring in a reformer.
Now, the deep state's never been this backed into a corner, ever. We have Trump assassination files that we want to release, JFK assassination files, COVID files, Epstein, Diddy. What about that pipe bomb? Is the FBI still working on that one? Who planted that? It's just another conspiracy theory that you were right about. The lab leak, the laptop, and now Jan 6. No wonder Biden's under pressure to dish out more pardons. Who knows how high this thing goes?
Absolutely. Incredible stuff. Incredible to see it on Fox News. Just yet more vindication for what we've been saying forever. And of course, then you go to CNN. Their headline is this, quote, no undercover FBI agents were at the U.S. Capitol during the insurrection, a Justice Department watchdog has found, rejecting claims by allies of President-elect Donald Trump that the violence on January 6, 2021 was provoked by federal agents. Well, they weren't technically agents. Again, these are the word games they play, expecting you not to get past the headline and thinking you're an idiot, knowing the people who believe them are idiots and are just looking for confirmation of their bias. But of course, it gets a little deeper. I like how Jesse Waters there asked whether the FBI confidential human sources were egging things on like they did in the case of Gretchen Whitmer, the kidnapping case, another just totally fabricated from whole cloth non-event that would not have existed without the FBI planning and organizing it in the first place. Then they break it up and, act like heroes. Because that's a good point. People could have been and probably were egged on by FBI agents in January 6th. The other question is, if you had 26 confidential human sources embedded in all of these groups for months before January 6th, and then on the day of January 6th, then why didn't they report any plans to overthrow the government? If this was an insurrection, how is it that 26 confidential human sources embedded in the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys and any other group making their way to the Capitol on January 6th, why didn't a single one of them reach out to the FBI and say, hey, this group is planning on violence. Hey, this group is planning an insurrection. Hey, you better step in and stop this because they've got big plans on January 6th. It's going to go down. They're going to storm the Capitol. That's the point of confidential human sources, not to participate in a crime and then report on it after. The idea is that you can head off the crime. You can stop the crime before it happens with your confidential human sources. That's the whole point of them being there. It'd be utterly pointless to have people in a group and just let the group commit the crime. Just let them go and do the insurrection. Why even have confidential human sources at that point? The answer is obvious. It's because there was never a plan. It's because if there had been any plan at all to do anything violent on January 6th, it would have been stopped beforehand by the FBI with their dozens of confidential human sources. The fact that no plan was stopped is because there was no plan in the first place. What this really confirms ultimately is that whatever happened on January 6th was totally disorganized, not organized centrally, not planned on, not pre-planned. There was no greater insurrection attempt taking place, because all of that would have, first of all, come out by now if you have all these confidential human sources embedded in all of these groups that at this moment the leadership is sitting behind bars and in prison on conspiracy. But they never provided any information that showed that there was some big insurrection planned. And if there had been, the FBI would have been in place to stop it because they had the confidential human sources telling them what was going on. So it just proves conclusively that it was exactly what we all have said it was the entire time, a peaceful protest that descended into a spontaneous riot when attacked by the Capitol Police. By the way, do we think the FBI is the only law enforcement agency in America operating on January 6th? All I can tell you is where I sit right now, I'm under the jurisdiction of probably at least half a dozen police agencies. Right? There's going to be the national police agencies, obviously, the FBI, the CIA would have some sort of a jurisdiction here. You'd have Secret Service could sort of do whatever they wanted. But, on the federal level, there's probably a dozen anyway. But then on the local level, the Metro, the bus line, they have a police force that could pull me over. They have state troopers, the Austin City Police, there's the county sheriffs, there's constables, there's just dozens upon dozens, just layers upon layers of police powers that can be used. How much more intense do you think it is on January 6th? And if there were 26 FBI confidential human sources, again, I don't even trust that number. That's probably a percentage of the actual number, and the agents were probably there too, just not named. Do you think there were any confidential human sources from the Capitol Police? Do you think there were any from the Metro Police in D.C.? Do you think there were any from the CIA? So you've got 26 FBI confidential human sources. That, of course, confirms what we've been saying the entire time, and the fact that they didn't do anything preemptively to stop some sort of violent outbreak means one was never planned. So, all of this is confirmation and justification and vindication for everything that we've been saying since January 6th, but it also begs the question of what they still aren't telling us. And one thing we know, whether it's the pardons or World War III, or at this point selling off chunks of the border wall, the Biden administration is doing absolutely everything it can to leave the Trump administration in the worst position it could possibly be in, which in and of itself is a fundamental violation, a just incredible betrayal of what they claim to support. Because after all, there are multiple ways to interrupt or obstruct the peaceful transition of power. One of them is to deny that the election results were accurate. Now, of course, in Trump's situation, that claim was legitimate, and it certainly was rigged, and we know that even more so now that the results of 2024 have gone back to normal and didn't have any of the hallmarks of the blatant fraud that we saw in 2020. But if you wanted to, interrupt the peaceful transfer of power, one way would be to just refuse to leave outright. Donald Trump, of course, didn't do that. But the other way to interrupt that process is to make the transition of power happen just, not peacefully, not smoothly, not in a way that actually benefits and is carried out for the benefit of the American people, but in a way that puts the American people at risk by disadvantaging the incoming administration in as many ways as you possibly can. And that's exactly what they're doing. We've been talking forever about the way that they are Trump-proofing their designs, whether that's just funding Ukraine at an incredibly rapid rate, where it's every day now they announce some new multi-billion-dollar package to Ukraine, either in loans that will never be paid off or just straight cash injections from the Pentagon, just funding that as much as possible. We've seen the undercover video of people in the Biden administration saying, now that Trump's coming in, he's going to cut off the money for climate change research. So we're just dishing out billions of dollars as quickly as we can to do that. This story from InfoWars: Biden admin auctions off unused border wall sections ahead of Trump inauguration. Massive sections of steel bollard fencing bollard fencing, originally intended to construct the incoming Trump administration's border wall, are reportedly being sold off by the Biden administration. Footage obtained from a Border Patrol agent by the Daily Wire Thursday shows big rigs hauling numerous large, nearly 33-foot-long segments of steel fencing out of a location near Tucson, Arizona, and taking them to an auction lot. So they know that Trump's going to restart the construction on the border wall, and they're just trying to make it harder for him to do so. Like, they can't stop him from doing so. They just want to make it more expensive and more difficult to do so by selling off the usable material already provided for that purpose. Just petulant, vengeful disruption for the sake of disruption. So here you see the giant sections of wall that, just take a crane and a soldering iron to put together. Half a mile worth being transported every day away from the staging area into auctions where I guess it'll be melted down and recycled. And then that'll force the Trump administration to have to purchase those new all again. So just wasting millions upon millions of taxpayer dollars.
I could stop you there.
Okay.
There's a fun little update. Dan Patrick was on with Laura Ingraham and acknowledged the fact that he knew that Mayorkas was auctioning off these sections of border wall on GovPlanet and intends to buy them and then donate them to the Trump administration.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, they're selling these. I mean, it's like almost insulting. Like, it doesn't matter how like rusty and whatever steel is. Like, it's still an expensive material because it's so strong, and it's, we built a chicken coop out of steel framing. It was pretty expensive. It wasn't super cheap. They're selling these things like 5 32-foot by 8-foot steel girders for $5. $5. It's like a fire sale. This is what they're listed in the auction. So if that's what you say it was, is this Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor?
Yeah, Dan Patrick was on with Ingram.
Oh, he's getting a deal. He's getting pardon the pun, a real steal on this steel.
GovPlanet is pretty tight.
But look, it all goes to the same intention from the Biden administration to leave the Trump administration in the worst possible position it can be in, including more information coming out about the 1,500 or so commutations that Biden shoved through yesterday. More people are looking into who exactly he's commuting the sentence of. And it's pedophiles and Chinese spies, folks. Yashar Ali posted this on X. One of the people who got their sentences commuted by Biden today was one of the Kids for Cash judges. He accepted big kickbacks in exchange for sentencing kids to a for-profit prison. Over 2,500 children were impacted by these corrupt judges, and some of them ended up taking their own lives. These sentences had a devastating impact on their lives, and yet former Luzerne County Judge Michael T. Conahan, who gained notoriety for wrongfully imprisoning juveniles in the Kids for Cash scandal, nearly 100 this judge is one of the nearly 1,500 inmates whose sentence Joe Biden commuted Thursday as his term in office comes to a close. But it wasn't just him. It was, as reported by Brandon Morello, a Chinese national was granted clemency. He was convicted of having 47,000 child pornography images in his possession. He was sentenced to 97 months in prison, but now he's been released thanks to old Joe Biden just screwing us over in as many ways as possible, as rapidly as possible, before he is ushered out the door and into the afterlife. So thank you, you despicable old goon. We'll be back on the other side to break down Syria and the drones. Stay with us.
My fellow patriots, there are a lot of amazing Patriot gear, supplements, you name it, at the AlexJonesStore.com. But we've now added a whole bunch of other really cool items. There are a bunch of amazing campaign coins for InfoWars for $17.76. For the Fight for Liberty on the site as low as $9.99. Some of the challenge coins are $14.97. They're great fundraisers for us. They have a lot of weight in them. They look great. They're great conversation starters, great gifts, great keepsakes, mementos, and you know that you've supported the InfoWar. So I want to thank you all for your past support and encourage you now to go to thealexjonesstore.com, our amazing sponsor that will keep us on air one way or the other. If InfoWars gets shut down, that's okay, because they're a great sponsor. They're not owned by me, and the bad guys won't be able to shut down thealexjonesstore.com. So go there for the campaign coins and so much more today, and keep me in the fight. Thank you so much for your support.
Start with Sam was involved. Sam was a co-founder, but Elon was a co-founder. So just for full credit and context, Elon was the original funder of OpenAI. Excuse me, the original donor, and he was sort of the central founder. And he and Sam worked together, but like Elon was definitely either the founder, and was certainly a magnet for the early talent, and as well as the funder. So Elon has been involved there from the beginning. Yeah, so look, I'm happy to go through the details on that. The umbrella thing that I think has been happening is the social media went on this arc that I've described from like 2013 to today, where it became a censorship machine. AI has gone on a hyper accelerated version of that arc. It happened basically right up front. It took time for social media to become a censorship machine. It happened on AI right from the beginning. It happened on AI right from the beginning because AI companies learned from the experience of the social media companies, and they just said, well, if we're going to end up building a censorship machine over a decade, we might as well just do it up front.
Mark, are you saying it's intentional, or it's just learning off of information? Yeah, please go on.
It's 100% intentional. Yeah. So that's how you get Black George Washington at Google, is because there's an override in the system that basically says everybody has to be, like, literally everybody has to be black. Boom. Right? Like there's squads, there are large sets of people in these companies that determine these policies and write them down and encode them into these systems. Like, so overwhelmingly what people experience is intentional. Like there's just no question about that. And they have these groups with this very Orwellian name called trust and safety, right? Right. Mistrust and no safety, that do this. And a lot of these companies, it's common to have as many people on the trust and safety side sort of deciding on all these policies as it is to have engineers building these systems. And then actually what happens, right, is you're an AI company and you need to build this kind of machine, this kind of censorship machine. And so you go hire the people out of social media who built the machine at social media. And so it's literally, in a lot of cases, it's actually the same people doing it in AI. And so these companies were born woke. They were born woke. They were born as censorship machines. They exhibit all of that behavior. And the big companies, they're doing it for the same reason the social media companies did. They're doing it because either they've already gotten pressure or they know they're going to get pressure. And so you might as well just do it. Most of the people who work at these companies agree with that side of things, and so they think that they need it. I was in a discussion with a professor who is at one of the big companies, and I was like, it's crazy to have this, these AIs give you these patronizing moral lectures all the time when you ask questions. And this professor said, well, my undergrads actually really like that. Like, that's how they expect technology to work, right? And I'm like screaming inside my own head, like, what the hell, right? So like, it's the same thing. It's like baked into the culture, right? And these are a lot of these people are newly arrived from these universities. They're fully, indoctrinated. And so they're very sheltered, isolated people, right? They're, kind of people who spend all their time in a computer lab. So they haven't had a reason to think this stuff out more broadly. So it's the same thing. My concern, and this goes back to the censorship and political control of AI, is like 1,000 times more dangerous than censorship and political control of social media, maybe 1,000,000 times more dangerous. Social media censorship and political control is very dangerous, but at least it's only like people talking to each other and communicating. The thing with AI is I think AI is going to be the control layer for everything in the future, right? So I think AI is going to be the control layer for how the healthcare system works. I think it's going to be the control layer for how the education system works. It's going to be the control layer for how the government works, right? And so in the future, when you deal with a healthcare system or with the education system or with the government, you're going to be dealing with an AI. And so if that AI is, call it what you want, woke, biased, censored, politically controlled, like, you are in like a hyper Orwellian, China style social credit system nightmare. Right, absolute nightmare. And this goes directly to Elon's argument, which is at the core of this, what you have to do is you have to train the AI to lie. And it's just like, if you wanted to create the ultimate dystopian world, you'd have a world where everything is controlled by an AI that's been programmed to lie. Like, it's hard to imagine things getting worse than that. And the precondition, this hasn't rolled all the way out yet because AI is still new and it's not in charge of, it's not being put in control of everything. But like, this is where things are headed. And so it's like, I think vitally important that this not happen. My hope is that the the culture changes, the case studies, and all the stuff we already just talked about, but all the stuff that this new administration might do. My hope is that this all gets kind of peeled back and thrown out into the sunlight, and people writ large come to really understand this, and people don't stand for it, and this doesn't happen. But this has to be fought. This will happen by default unless people fight it.
Are the incumbents pushing?
So it was Mark Anderson, hosted by Elon Musk. And, of course, it just reflects what we've been saying on this show for the entire time we've been on air.
Taking a record of the hearts and minds of the American people, it's the American Journal with your host, Harrison Smith.
All right, welcome back, folks. We're going to get into the UFO stuff in just a second, but I want to take a moment to talk about something that maybe bridges the two topics, one we were just discussing and the next. The video that we just showed you was about censorship online and with AI. There's also this from Canada. Canada splits online harms bill to speed up controversial censorship push. This is the Online Harm Act, C-63. The reason C-63's passage has slowed down in Parliament in ongoing debates around some of the most contentious provisions, such as new hate crime offenses that could be punished with life in prison when it's committed along with another crime. You remember that? We reported on that when they first announced it. Canada trying to sentence you to life in prison for speech. Just absolutely mind-blowing. Well, that was too controversial. They split it up and they say, well, we're going to have one bill that deals with hate crime offenses, another bill that deals with protecting children from online harm. Either way, they're setting up a digital safety commission. Right. And look, part of me understands why people would want this, especially when it comes to children and what they're being exposed to on the internet. It's hard to argue there shouldn't be at least some sort of restriction when you've got just the most awful things people have ever seen. You've got, unfettered communication between adult weirdos and children who they are tricking into doing things for them. Like, it's pretty bad out there. I get the impulse to want the government to do something about it. The problem that we have is that the people in charge are the most evil people in the world. And they will only use their power to further target and abuse children in a myriad of different ways. And we know this because the way that they use the mainstream media now and the way that they use censorship now seems to do absolutely nothing to mitigate the access children have to pornography or violent material or communications with adults. That seems to go on unabated. Instead, it's people like us. It's people like InfoWars that get the brunt of the censorship. It's legitimate protest movements that are shut down through censorship. It's anti-war activism, exposing the lies of the war propaganda. That will be called hate speech and censored by these people. So, like so many things in our world, the idea itself is not, by definition, de facto, prima facie absurd. We want to protect children on the internet. The problem is when you look at who it is that's trying to implement this stuff and what their actual intentions are and what they think is good for children versus bad. It reminds me of the fact that they're, implementing laws to ban conversion therapy around the country, meaning you can't tell kids in school or church or therapy or anything that they can maybe not indulge in sexual fantasies. Tell them that they actually have an obligation, a responsibility as a human to be moral and not just indulge in whatever carnal pleasure releases endorphins in their brains. That's bad and wrong. But if you want to keep a little kid in the classroom while the rest of his class goes to recess and give him one-on-one tutoring about how cool and fun and brave it is to wear a dress in school, but he can't tell his parents, they consider that fine and good and not a violation of the conversion therapy statute. So it's not that, implementing these things is de facto bad. It's that we know the way that they'll be used and who's going to be using them. And again, I want to emphasize that people that are in charge, we think they're evil not because we just don't like their faces, although have you seen them? That would be a good enough reason, honestly. It's because they keep demonstrating the bottomless insanity that they're capable of. Because as we speak, they're coming out with the most absurd war propaganda to start and continue the most devastating conflicts the world has ever seen, like the one in Ukraine or what's going on in Syria. It's not like these people are just, shutting down ideas they don't like because they're, you just get the classic thing of just like the hardcore Christians don't like rock and roll because that's the devil's music. And it's like, no, these people lie and they censor and they deceive and they manipulate and they control the mainstream media. And the direct effect of that is millions of people losing their lives. It's not just like they don't like what you say and it hurts their ears, they're offended. No, they utilize censorship and mass media programming to bring about total destruction on huge swaths of the planet, killing millions, destroying entire nations, and just abomination after abomination. So I just want to, impress upon you the danger of letting these people get control once again of the levers of information in this country as we are wrenching them out of their grasp. So let's talk about Syria. And it's been a crazy, time period over the last 14 years at this point, where Syria held on just barely by its fingernails, only to be totally swept to the side and the Assad regime destroyed in 8 days of a, concerted terrorist invasion. But let's go back in time. I guess we'll start way back. We'll go to clip number 19. It's a clip that I'm sure has been played on InfoWars 300 times in the last couple decades, but if you haven't seen it before, it's worth revisiting and thinking about some of the details and how they align with what we're experiencing now. Clip 19, here's General Wesley Clark explaining that the U.S. government planned to take out 7 countries in 5 years following September 11th. Let's watch.
Because I'd been through the Pentagon right after 9/11. About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Finishing off with Iran. So, a couple things about this. One, like this was obviously always the plan. The second thing is that the plan didn't work. That was 2001. They planned on taking down 7 countries by 2006. It is now 2024. And I guess they feel like they have a deadline approaching. I guess they feel like they have some sort of deadline looming because instead of 7 countries in 5 years, they had totally failed to make effective inroads into Lebanon or Syria in that entire time. And they still don't have a handle on those two countries, but it's almost like they're just rushing to start the war with Iran, because he said they're, finishing up with Iran. It was always the plan to finish with Iran. You need to get all these other ones done first to get the war in Iran. And so it's like in the last 3 weeks, it's taken them 23 plus years to get to this point. And the last 3 weeks are like, and we did Lebanon and we got Syria. So now it's on to Iran. We've checked them all off the list. Now it's time to go to Iran. We got to start a war with Iran. Which is hilarious because Lebanon, Hezbollah, not even remotely destroyed or taken over. The incursions by Israel were rebuffed constantly, and they didn't even make it to their first objective, the Litani River, before, accepting the ceasefire. Syria, they may have gotten rid of Bashar al-Assad, but it is now just a nest of terrorist vipers, just complete anarchy and chaos. That's not, a handle on that country either, in even the most remote degree. It's almost like they're just pretending that they got it done so that they can check it off the list and move on to Iran. And they seem to be desperate to do this in the run-up to President Trump's election. Let's go a little bit forward in time. That video was talking about a meeting held in 2001, shortly after September 11th. Now here's a French diplomat, a French politician, talking about how the UK planned activity in Syria 2 years before that conflict began. Clip number 18, UK planned a war in Syria before the unrest began, according to this ex-foreign minister of France. Let's watch. He says, I want to tell you something. Roughly 2 years ago, before the hostilities started in Syria, I was in England for other things not related to Syria. I met with English officials, and some of them, who are my friends, admitted to me, by asking my opinion, that they're preparing something in Syria. This was in England and not in the United States. England was preparing the invasion of the rebels in Syria. They even asked me, as a foreign minister, whether I would participate in this. Of course, I said otherwise. I'm French. It does not interest me. This is to say that this operation comes from far away from Syria. It was prepared, conceived, and organized. For what purpose, he's asked. I will tell you the simple purpose of removing the Syrian government, because in that region it's important to know that this Syrian regime has made anti-Israel remarks. Consequently, everything that moves in the region around, I'm judging the confidence of the Israeli prime minister who told me this a while ago. We will try to get along with the neighboring states, and those who don't get along, we will take them down. By get along, they mean submit, I would think. It's a policy, it's a conception of history. Why not, after all? But we need to know it. We all need to know it. Okay, so the Brits planned a war on Syria years ago, this according to Ronald Dumas, the ex-foreign minister of France. And then even beyond that, we have Representative Thomas Massey, who came out with this video just a few days ago, saying that he believes, as I think anybody paying attention does, that the U.S. government itself orchestrated or at the very least facilitated this regime change in Syria that now has ISIS running the country. Here's Thomas Massey, clip 13.
Let's talk about the timing of this. Remember, Tulsi Gabbard was in Congress, and she and I collaborated on a lot of these efforts to stop our meddling, the U.S. meddling in Syria. And now she's been named as the head of DNI. Well, I think that was the signal to the deep state to go in for the kill and get this over with, because Trump and some of his nominees, like Tulsi Gabbard, are signaling that we are not going to carry on the policies of Obama and the deep state.
So that's why I've been thinking that we've been talking about that on our show, that it seemed the timing of all of this just seems incredibly fishy. So it is your assessment that this was really an effort here before Trump gets into office to go in and basically put in place this sort of deep state CIA plan in Syria. It's clear as day to you, it seems.
It's clear as day to me. And, whether it was led by the United States or whether we just encouraged it, definitely the timing is not a mistake. When you find a turtle on a fence post, it didn't get there by accident. So, for instance, some of the stronger powers that be, like Israel, they used their military forces to bomb the dozens of jets and helicopters in Syria. Basically, what these terrorists couldn't do, other people in the Middle East hurry up and did here in this last week to make sure that Assad didn't have the typical resources that a government would have to respond to these threats.
The timing is no mistake. It was a signal to the deep state to go in for the kill. Representative Thomas Massie claims U.S. facilitated regime change in Syria. Again, it's what our intelligence apparatus has had its eye on since 2001. It's been a very long time coming. And again, what it shows is that, if everything was a show, if everything was a game, if everything was orchestrated and everything was, fake completely, well, then by 2006, Lebanon and Syria and Libya and Iraq would have all fallen. That's what they wanted. That's what they said they were doing. They weren't able to do it because they're not gods. They're not, puppet masters controlling absolutely everything. They have to contend with human will, and they can experience setbacks and failures, and they have to reorganize or, go to plan B. In this case, it's like we're on plan C, where they are literally just destroy Syria with an ISIS, Zerg swarm attack, and then just claim like, oh, there's a new government there, and it's really great, actually. It's amazing. We did it. Can we go to war with Iran now? We have to go to war with Iran now. I mean, that's always the plan. That's been the plan. They've been building up to that. They seemingly feel as though Trump is going to do something major, right? If Trump was in on their plan, they wouldn't be rushing like this to get it done. And even if he was just not against them, even if it's been 24 years, they could wait another 4. What's the harm in just, waiting out another Trump presidency? It's because it's all collapsing for them. Their whole plan is predicated on the American people being asleep and falling for it and thinking what they're doing is righteous and going along with invasion after invasion and regime change after regime change. And that's not happening anymore. And they recognize that sea change is going on, and they recognize the existential threat Trump poses to their wider global scheme. And so they're trying to get it done and trying to get Trump in this mess as quickly as possible before he comes into office. I don't know if they'll be able to pull that off, but clearly it's all on Trump's shoulders now to stop World War III and prevent these psychos from continuing their relentless onslaught. And so all this leads up to Syria being taken over by radical Muslims and ripped from the hands of Bashar al-Assad, who, while a strong man, was an Alawite Syrian, which means he was a more moderate sect and allowed the Christian population to exercise their faith unmolested and generally had a more progressive view than the Wahhabists out of Saudi Arabia that make up ISIS. And so I almost, throughout all of history, there's 2 stories. There's 2 parallel stories. One is the official story, and one is the actual story. And with Syria, I guess the normie official story is like, oh, Bashar al-Assad was like really terrible. He was a total tyrant. These wonderful, loving, they're basically the founding fathers, but Syrian. These great people rose up in opposition to him, and it was a huge, widespread rebellion where everybody wanted out from under the thumb of this tyrant, and they overthrew him, and now they're heroically trying to set up this ragtag government as these, lovely rebels against the evil empire. Now, the actual story is that America and Israel and NATO and the UK and Turkey and Saudi Arabia and so many others have spent the last decade or so funneling tens of thousands of barbarian soldiers into Syria in an attempt to overwhelm it and collapse it so that, Israel can act in Lebanon without fear of Hezbollah being resupplied. Like, that's the real reason. It couldn't be more obvious. They're coming out with propaganda to try to shore up and prop up their narrative. I'm sure people have seen this. I don't even know if it's worth going to because it's been spread around so much already, but we'll go ahead and at least start it. Clip number 2 here. It's CNN's Clarissa Ward and her team pretending to find a Syrian prisoner left behind in a secret prison. Let's watch.
I can't tell, though. It might just be a blanket, but it's the only cell that's locked.
Is he going to shoot it?
The guard makes us turn the camera off while he shoots the lock off the cell door. We go in to get a closer look. It's still not clear if there is something under the blanket.
Oh, it moved. Is there someone there?
He didn't wake up from the gunshot being fired, apparently.
Or is it just a blanket? I don't know.
Does this look real to anybody else?
Hello?
Is anybody buying this? I mean, seriously, are there people sitting at home going, oh my God, honey, come look at this. No, they're going into a Syrian prison. No one's been in there yet. It was the only locked door. They just shot the lock off. They did? Did they show that? No, they turned the camera off for shooting the lock off, but they definitely did it. And this guy puts his hands up.
He says, I'm a
He's got like manicured fingernails. His hair has been trimmed. His beard is not growing. His clothes are not dirty.
He tells the fighter he's from the city of Humps.
His most absurd
cell for 3 months.
lie.
Okay, you're okay. You're okay. You're okay.
It's like bad acting. It's just pathetic.
He clutches my arm tightly with both hands.
Gives him a gentle kiss on the pate.
She's literally treating him like an animal.
Mike.
You're okay. You're okay.
Okay, it's water. It's water.
Oh, she gives him a sippy bottle.
Does he speak English? Because she's
probably not.
She's like, it's water. It's water. It's okay. It's okay.
I know. If anything, he would just be like, what the hell's going on? Why is there a blonde woman in my cell?
And also, get the man some liquor. Come on.
Hey,
he's been
Muslim.
in the cell.
He doesn't want that. No, but I mean, just nothing about it. It goes on. Like, they keep filming this guy. I think if we want to go to clip 8 here, and this was retweeted over and over again. The order went out, right? Everybody at CNN was given the order, retweet this video, put your own statement out. Caitlin Collins from CNN, this is incredible. Jake Sherman, must watch. Like, again, they're all just posting the same video with just the most insincere, this is incredible. Must watch. I saw like 10 of these yesterday. Everybody at CNN retweeted this video with the same just bland, like, wow, incredible. This is so intense. Oh, she's like pretending to have an emotional response. Again, we can pick it apart, but like, we just laugh at it instead. We just laugh at the thought that CNN thought anybody would buy it. He's holding the woman's hand. Yeah, right. I mean, my God. We'll be right back.
For listeners and viewers that have gone to the AlexJonesStore.com and gotten Ultimate CMOS, which is the ultimate superfood, chock full of organic iodine and all these key vitamins and minerals, and the way God has the Irish sea moss grow, the way it all fuses together, just has incredible effects. It's right up there with hemp for just being a over-the-top superfood. I've been on it for now 4 or 5 months, and the clarity, the focus, my skin, my energy, the weight loss is insane. And so, Ultimate Sea Moss is available at thealexshowstore.com. And if you love that product, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to want 2 of the new gummy products that are in. Ultimate Turmeric Formula and Ultimate Iron and Vitamin C. Both of these powerful gummy products are available right now with a big bottle jammed right to the top with these babies. Both of these amazing formulas are now available, discounted at thealexshowstore.com. Thanks for keeping us on the air.
Infowars.com is tomorrow's news today.
You're watching The American Journal with your host, Harrison Smith. Watch live right now at band.video.
All right, welcome back, folks. Again, I hope I don't have to lay out for you just the sheer absurdity of the clip you just watched. And it goes on, right? Let's go to clip number 8 here. Because again, CNN is pretending to find prisoners in Assad's prison. It's almost, I always think of the tactic used by scammers where they deliberately misspell things because they don't want smart people to fall for their scams. They want the dummies. They want people who don't notice that sort of stuff because they'll be the ones that are more like, it's like if you're a salesman, you learn to figure out like who will legitimately, who's a legitimate customer that will actually buy something and who's just a waste of your time. Scammers don't want to waste their time on intelligent people that'll eventually figure it out and, not fall for the scam. They want to dedicate their precious time to the dumb people that won't figure out what's going on and allow them to get off scot-free. It's almost like something like that's happening here, where it's like CNN is putting such little effort into their war propaganda. It's almost like they want the dumb people falling for it and just want to, it's almost like they want to give fodder to everybody else who can see through it. Because I can't understand how pathetic this whole thing is. This attempt to present this well-fed guy with a clean haircut, freshly trimmed beard, manicured nails, in spotless civilian clothing was actually a torture victim for months who hadn't been let out of his cell in 4 days, where he was randomly discovered sleeping completely under a blanket. Like that alone is like, what? Who sleeps completely covered by a blanket? You'll suffocate. What is he doing? Is he hiding under the blanket like a baby? It just makes no sense. His reaction makes no sense.
Well, like he just heard a gunshot. Someone shot the lock off his cell. They could be there to...
Yes, apparently heard a gun. So yeah, it's like a child. He heard a loud bang and he thought he should get under the blanket to hide from the monster that's coming. Like, it just makes no... just imagine what it would really be like to come upon a cell of a person who had not been, cleaned or bathed or properly fed in months. I mean, you'd have the psychotic look. His beard would be long and scraggly. Owen was talking about this yesterday and comparing what Owen looked like after a couple months in U.S. prison, not the worst in the world, not a Syrian torture dungeon. And he looked worse in terms of his beard and his hair being wild. And yeah, there's Saddam Hussein after, hiding out for a little while. It looks something like that. But also, if this is a dude who hasn't been fed in 4 days, probably the minute the door opens, he'd be on his hands and knees begging for food. His eyes would be wide. He'd be sallow-cheeked. And if the first thing he sees is a blonde American woman, you think he'd be grabbing her hand as she caresses his head? The first thing he'd probably think is, oh my God, the CIA is here to kill me. The CIA is here to inject something into my brain to control me like a robot. Like, it would be such a bizarre thing. Because imagine, you spend months where every once in a while some Syrian dude just kicks your door open, throws slop at you, and shocks you with an electrical prod. Imagine what that would look like. Somebody who's been experiencing that treatment for months on end. Do you think you would just get up and be like, oh, what's going on? Oh, a lady speaking to me like a baby? Cuddle me, mommy. No, what is this? It's utterly absurd. And everybody can recognize it, but they still go along with it. So, again, I don't know if it's the scammer thing of let's do something so ridiculous that only the dummies fall for it as some sort of psychological imperative that I can't wrap my mind around. Or maybe it's just they just know that they just have to do the bare minimum and just pretend and they think they can just, call you names. Or it's cult programming, kind of, where the cult members believe things that are deliberately absurd. 2 + 2 = 5, 1984 style. Because everybody from CNN is pretending to believe this. And they're not putting in a lot of effort either. I just showed you 2, but I mean, everybody from CNN put out the same video with the same, retweet. Where there's wow, this is incredible. Amazing, period. Like, they're not even putting effort into this. And again, nobody is buying it. Nobody's buying it. Caitlin Collins, this is incredible. Of course, my response to that was to show the definition of incredible, which means not credible. So, inaccurate label from Caitlin Collins. You're right. That report about the Syrian prisoner, it is incredible. Not credible reporting whatsoever. And everybody can see it. It's like my coats aren't even that clean. He's like pretending to shake. She's pretending to hold him. She's like pretending to breathe deeply. He's like, oh, the sun. I'm seeing the sun for the first time. Absurd. And I don't need to explain. I really don't need to explain that because everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. This is incredibly staged. You're an incredible idiot. Shameful to push this lie. You know what you're doing. Have you ever slept through a weapon going off? Homie is well groomed after 3 months of solitary, 2 weeks in the field, and I looked more of a mess. Coincidentally, CNN found the one dude in the prison that speaks English. Clarissa Ward ducking imaginary missiles was more believable. Yeah, it's the same woman that was pretending to lie in a ditch and be under fire by Hamas. Totally never happened. I haven't seen anything this deeply moving and authentic since Geraldo opened Capone's vault. This is faker than the 2020 election results. This is not credible. Exactly, I agree. This is like Anderson Cooper standing chest deep in the floodwater while his cameraman is in water up to his ankles. Jesus Christ, this is so obviously fake. You're making me sick, Caitlin Collins. Does anybody else question? And it just goes on and on. Nobody believes this. Nobody, okay? Jake Sherman, another, mainstream media personality from NBC and MSNBC. Must watch. He doesn't even bother capitalizing the words. Must watch. Again, they got the order. You put it out, tweet something out. Don't just retweet it, though. You got to put your own, you got to say something. You got to say must watch, or you got to say incredible. You got to say something. So they're just like, all right, must watch, send. They do bare minimum effort in this war propaganda. 1 star out of 10. I'm just not buying it. And again, every comment under this post. Cleanest torture victim I've ever seen. How'd he stay so clean? Locked in a cell 5 days after the gates of the prison were opened. Even managed a manicure and clean clothes before the CNN, quote, discovery. One person, Newman, I'm not a fan of CNN reporting, but that's one hell of a report. Wow. That's what I'm saying. Are these the people they're going after? It's like, as long as we get the idiots. As long as we get the idiots to buy it. I don't understand the method, but clearly idiots are the only ones even remotely buying this. This is the most staged video in the history of staged videos. Propaganda, Oscar winning for sure. Well-fed, clean clothes, trim beard. Sure, guys, staged. Oscar nominations incoming. This one was more believable, and they point to the other time CNN was caught faking attacks as I'm in Saudi Arabia with a big blue screen. Total fraud. Intensely powerful moments, says Timothy Bellman. Yeah, so powerful. I can't believe it. I'm almost crying. Now, Max Blumenthal actually gets into the details of this. He says this is an obviously staged and fake scene by one of the biggest regime change frauds in corporate media. This prison had already been cleared out by HTS goon squads days earlier. Then civilians scoured its cells for relatives. But somehow Clarissa Ward, the news actress who once faked being under direct fire by Hamas and who has spent over a decade shamelessly propagandizing for the jihadists now executing minorities in Latakia, just happened upon the last prisoner slumbering under a blanket. This scam scenario reminds me of the time Ward's colleague, Arwa Damon, determined that Assad used chemical weapons by sniffing a child's backpack, and of the countless blatant deceptions deployed by the Syrian opposition on its way towards becoming the new gangster government. Journalist flim-flam like this not only exposes the absence of editorial standards at CNN, it raises questions about the credibility of Ward's past pieces in trumping up regime change in other countries targeted by U.S. and U.K. intelligence. So that's who this person is. Clarissa Ward is just a blatant propagandist there to justify the brutal and devastating wars carried out for the sake of the American elite and Israel. And there's like multiple examples of this. This is the one that's gone totally viral, except by seeing it and just recognizing how utterly absurd it is. Clarissa enters Syrian presidential palace not wearing a hijab and then is ordered to wear one by the U.S.-backed rebels. Welcome to the new and liberated Syria. So this is another just like blatant falsehood that they're pushing. She interviews this woman who is like, I can go outside without a hijab on now. And it's like, no, Syria didn't have a hijab law. Bring up a picture of Bashar al-Assad and his wife. Did you ever see her ever wearing a hijab? I mean, these people lived in London for most of their upbringing. Like, they were not Muslim radicals. Bring up the pictures of the Christians in Syria celebrating Christmas in the city streets. Nobody's wearing a hijab. But they're trying to spread the lie that now these new, like, look at this is the president they ousted that they're saying was the radical Muslim extremist. And now the people of Syria are free from his oppression and the women can go outside without wearing a hijab. Again, just absurd, beyond absurd. Okay. But they're trying to sell this. Let's go to clip number 21. This woman saying Syria is so free, and they sort of have to raise their voices to try to drown out the terrorists chanting Allah Akbar behind them. It's very silly. Let's watch.
Tell me what this feels like.
This is absolutely amazing. After all of these years, we are live on the international TV. This is amazing. This is unspeakable. This is us after.
This is amazing. We're on international TV. It's like, you have an American accent, lady. I'd bet $100 that woman lives in Tel Aviv. But yeah, that woman is like, I can go outside without wearing a hijab. Meanwhile, clip number 22 is a TikTok video from a Syrian Christian woman saying she tried to go outside and the HTS terrorist ISIS goons forced her back inside because she wasn't wearing a hijab. We'll go quickly to clip 22 here. It's not translated, but I just want to ask you, which is more believable? The woman pretending to celebrate while the terrorists behind her shout Allahu Akbar and chant it and pound their chests on CNN, or the woman with her TikTok webcam video saying, I used to be able to walk around without a hijab, but I tried to go outside and the terrorist goons that just took my country over are saying I have to wear a hijab from now on. Who do you trust more? Random Syrian woman with a cell phone camera or the mighty CNN? This is how pathetic their attempts at propaganda have become. And it's funny because they're even contradicted by the action of their own reporters. As we just pointed out, Clarissa enters Syria's presidential palace not wearing a hijab, but then is ordered to wear a hijab by the U.S.-backed rebels. Welcome to new and liberated Syria. And of course, she was happy to put the hijab on for the American puppet terrorists. And this was pointed out as a blatant hypocrisy in an interview between CNN and former President Ibrahim Raisi of Iran. CNN news anchor refused to wear a hijab and the interview was canceled. However, when former ISIS and Al-Qaeda leader Abu Mohammed al-Jawlani requested it, CNN was more than happy to oblige. It just shows how utterly fraudulent everything in the mainstream media is. They put on this big show. They go all the way to Iran. They get the interview set up. And then the Iranians go, hey, it's customary in our tradition. The women should be covered. Would you mind your interviewer covering? And they're just like, no, we refuse. We will not bend to your Islamic demands. We are a Western empowered women, and this is a stand for our rights, and we will not do it. And eventually the interview gets canceled. But they make a stand because they believe in this so strongly. And then they're going to interview the Islamic terrorists that just overthrew Syria, and they're like, oh, hijab? Sure, of course. Who are we to disrespect your beautiful culture? I love wearing hijabs. Do you have two? Can I wear two of them? Can I cover my chin and my forehead? Do you have anything where just my eyes show? I just want to be there for you, dear. So again, just everything they pretend to believe is a lie. Everything they tell you is a lie. Everything is just a flagrant attempt to cover up the real impetus and purpose behind all of this, which is, of course, the Greater Israel Project, the war in Ukraine against Russia, and the desperate attempt by the world elite to eliminate any national resistance to their unified plan. From Infowars.com, Amnesty International reports, genocide is the, quote, only reasonable conclusion to Israel's crimes in Gaza. According to a thorough investigation of Israel's current offensive against the occupied Gaza Strip, including its attacks of unprecedented magnitude, scale, and duration, along with a detailed analysis of the intent driving the nation's leaders, Amnesty International has demonstrated and concluded that Israel is committing the abominable crime of genocide against the Palestinian people. And they're still just like bombing hospitals and refugee camps on a daily basis. Daily basis. Every day there's a new story about a tent village or hospital or daycare blown apart by Israel. It's unrelenting. It's been going on for 14 months at this point with no end in sight because they're committing genocide. Again, there's a great thread on this whole Syrian propaganda video on InfoWars. Critics tear apart bizarre video of CNN correspondent so-called rescuing a Syrian prisoner. Totally absurd. There's absolutely nothing even remotely legitimate about this. And I want to, here's this from New York Times. U.S. and allies race to shape a new Syria trying to get on its feet. Oh, the terrorist horde is just a plucky little new government trying to get on its feet. And America is racing to help it because we're humanitarians and we want to see them start off on the right foot. Like, my God. I don't know. For some reason, I just picture like some sort of Ebenezer Scrooge character just being like, you know, we gotta get these orphans off their feet. And he's just got some sort of slave sweatshop operation going with a bunch of kids who he stole from their parents. But he's like, but it's because I love orphans. I have a charity where I take care of orphans. Like, oh, you mean the children you kidnapped and forced to make shoes? I don't know. That's bizarre. That's just what comes to mind when it's just like, oh, these plucky little people. It's like, okay, you've orchestrated all of this. Your designs are abominable and evil in every definition. You people are psychopaths willing to kill infinite numbers of people to achieve your earthly desires. And then you frame it and the media tells the story as if it's just plucky little Syria just getting off the ground, and America and our allies are here to help because we love them so much and we're humanitarians. Again, absurd is the only word for this. As Syria's new leaders take on the task of governing the country, world powers sent emissaries into the region on Thursday to begin to try to shape Syria's future and their relations with the rebels who toppled Bashar al-Assad from the presidency. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony J. Blinken met in Jordan with King Abdullah II and called it a time of promise but also peril for Syria and its neighbors before flying to Turkey to meet with Erdogan. Mr. Blinken said it was essential for Syria's new government, led by Sunni Islamist group that the United States and others have called a terrorist organization, to respect basic principles of human rights, including the protection of minorities, and to ensure that Syria is not used as the base for terrorism by groups like the Islamic State. Well, if that was your goal, then why did you oust the dude who spent the last decade fending off ISIS? Again, I pity the people that are falling for any of this, and you know they're out there. But in a way, it's like everything the elite are doing, it's like they know they can't trick us anymore. They know they can't get away with the lies. They know that we're not going to be fooled into a war. But it's like they know they don't need to fool us anymore. They have the authority. They can give the orders. They have the terrorist groups. They have the black sites. I mean, they can do it. And they don't need to convince us, but they need to just have the bare minimum thing to point to. So that's what they're giving us. It doesn't matter if it's fake. They just go, yeah, but, you know, it's like parallel construction. It's like we're doing parallel construction geopolitics where, yeah, it's not, you know, obviously the guy we got out of the prison, he wasn't a real prisoner, but like we can point to that and go, see, this guy was abused and kept in a cell and tortured, and we rescued him. This is a humanitarian issue. See, we checked the box, rescuing prisoners from despotic people. Of course, ignore Abu Ghraib and you know, the CIA black sites that we've been running for decades, torturing people with car batteries, stripping them naked and tying them to the wall and taking pictures of them. That's good and normal in democracy. Okay? This is the democratic torture, terrorist dungeon, okay? We're the good guys after all. But we'll do the bare minimum in putting together an obviously fake propaganda piece to justify what we're just going to do anyway, so just go along with it. And they get everybody in the mainstream media to go along with it, and they really live in this world where they think that that is like enough. Because, again, I think they think in like decades where they go, look, in 4 decades, no one's going to care. Let's just get this done. And then by the time people like finally get outraged at what we did to them, it'll already be done and we'll have gotten what we wanted anyway. So who cares? So they're just doing like the bare minimum. And so many times recently with the war in the Middle East, we're just confronted with the stupidity of war propaganda, how desperately they have to try to impose this crap on us. And I want to go to a video that I made a long time ago, a skit. I don't know, I think I'm the only one that thinks this is funny, but I do. I think it's very funny. But what it is it's not even a joke. It seriously is representing what Life magazine told the American people in 1916 when the American people did not want to go to World War I, but they wanted to get them into World War I. And so they created this map to inspire fear in the American people, even though it's utterly absurd. And I can't help but think the people 100 years from now are going to look back at what we're seeing on CNN today and think it's just as absurd as the 1916 projection from Life magazine that barbarians will take over Canada and Romanians will take over Jamaica if we don't go get involved in Eastern Europe. Clip number 10. Here's New Prussia, a real-life map from 1916, the equivalent of what we just saw from CNN.
February 10th, 1916, Life magazine, using a combination of the most recent military wires from Europe, as well as the expertise of the nation's top political scientists, has produced a map that represents accurately a future in which the Central Axis proves victorious against the Allied powers. Gaze in shocked disbelief at the horror of North America under their control. Goodbye, America. Hello, New Prussia. Adios, Mexico. Guten Tag, the province of Mexico. The West Coast from California to Washington, gone, subjugated by the Nippon menace. Beautiful Florida, renamed Turconia out of pure spite, and the once proud cities and provinces of the Commonwealth of Canada, abandoned to the barbarian hordes of the frozen North. Leave it to a kraut to rename this the Gulf of Hate. And what malevolent spirit possessed the Turk who built this perfidious land bridge? One can only shudder in terror as they picture in their reeling mind German steamboats plying the Straits of Horror to the Von Tirpitz Sea, or as it's called for now, the Atlantic. We, dear reader, assure you, this is the fate that awaits us should we slacken in our resolve for even a single moment. Washington, D.C., replaced by New Berlin upon the shores of the Kronprinz Bay. Not scary enough? Perhaps Cape Frightfulness will impress upon you the inhuman lengths the Central Powers will go. Have you purchased war bonds yet? One struggles to even comprehend living in a world in which proud New Orleans is renamed New Hamburg, where Cincinnati is torn down and rebuilt as Hindenburg, where even the Great Salt Lake is to be called the Gross Salzlaken. What kind of way to talk is that? Baltimore becomes Heidelbergopolis. Denver becomes Denverburg of all things, and Bismarck stays the same. The Kaiser may have ambitious plans, but I know for a guaranteed fact that the people, fine people of Little Rock, Arkansas, will die before they live in a place called Wiener Schnitzelplatz. And let us not forget the Prussians' heretofore secret intention of establishing an American reservation. Capital city, Goose Step. Population, you. Baja California, handed over to the Austrians as if it was no better than Serbia. And woe betide the fine people of the Pacific Coast. Will the Japanese treat the Californians with the same barbarity with which they subjugated Manchuria? Probably more. If you're still reading this, it means you haven't enlisted.
All right, folks, if you can look at this map and see how ridiculous it seems for them to argue that if we don't go to World War I, the United States will become New Prussia and the Turks will take over Florida. If you can look at this and see it for how ridiculous it is, can you look at what we see out of CNN and see it's just as ridiculous? See that war propaganda has not advanced in sophistication in 100 years. It's absurd. Don't fall for it. It's World War III. They are desperate for it. We can't let them have it.
Ladies and gentlemen, InfoWars is back on the air. The judge is having emergency hearings. Looks like their fraudulent sale won't go through. But regardless, I'm suing the daylights out of the Democratic Party and the big national gun control group that's actually behind the onion and has now admitted it in court. So, we also have backup studios, the Alex Jones Network. Whatever they do, we're staying on air to make sure Trump gets into office and to back him and his agenda to stop World War III, secure the borders, and more. But we can't do it without your support. So there are all these new, amazing, incredible designs up on on the AlexJonesStore.com. That has nothing to do with InfoWars. Not owned by me, so they can never get that. That's how we stay on the air, even if they're successful in shutting us down. If you go to the AlexJonesStore.com and you get great supplements, t-shirts, limited edition collectible fundraiser posters, and more, you will keep me on the air regardless of the Alex Jones Network. Please go to the site now, thealexjonesstore.com, and keep us on air. They're amazing products. Thank you so much for taking action. You are the resistance.